Thank you. Hey, thanks to everybody for coming today. We appreciate it. My name's Brad Smith. This is Tom McEvoy.
Oh.
About 4 years ago,
About that, yeah.
we met at this show. I'm the PR guy. And once you send out a news release announcing the show, you need to start figuring out what else you can come up with to talk about. So I started reaching out to some of the people that we advertise with and what have you, trying to find notable folks who would be willing to donate their time and come to the show. Just to do a little meet and greet for an hour or two. And we were advertising a little bit on Poker News. And our rep was Chad Holloway. He's now one of the bigwigs with Poker News. And first I asked him if there are any poker pros in the area who might be willing to come. He turned me on to Linda Johnson. She came the first time. Then I went back to the well. I said, do you have any other suggestions? I mean, Linda really worked out great. And he goes, you know, Tom McEvoy might be interested in coming. To which I went, okay, who's he?
Thanks. Brings me down to earth, that ego, you know.
Well, he won the 1983 World Series main event, and he's in the Poker Hall of Fame, and he lives here in Las Vegas. And he's a collector, and I think he'd be interested in coming. So I reached out to Tom. I said, would you be willing to come to our show for an hour or two and do a meet and greet? Tom said, well, I'd be more than happy to come to the show, but I don't want to come for an hour. I want to come for the whole 3 days. Give me a table. And so he did. He came for 3 days, and which gave me an opportunity to talk with him and hear some fascinating stories. He invited me over to his home, saw some of the paraphernalia that he had there, learned more stories. I shared some of the articles that I had written for the club magazine, and he's like, I like these, I like the way you write. One thing led to another, and like, Tom, you need to capture your life. If you ever thought about doing an autobiography, your stories are fascinating. And he's like, yeah, I've thought about it. I tried to do it a couple of times. It's just not my bag, but I like the way you write. Do you think you might be interested in doing it? And it's like, Tom, I've never written a book in my life. And he's like, well, I'll take a gander with you, or I'll take a risk with you if you're willing to take a risk with you. So we embarked on the journey. And that was about 1.5 years writing. Mm-hmm. Gave me several opportunities to come back to Las Vegas when I wouldn't have otherwise. Spent time in his house. This man cataloged his life in scrapbooks. He says, over there in all those bins in chronological order, there's the scrapbooks of all my poker achievements. Anytime there was any mention of me, and the poker press was a little bit different back in the time when he got here, but he collected them all through the times. I mean, he wrote for Card Player magazine. It was tons of stuff to go through, and it was great research for me, unearthing things that's, Tom, what about this?
I forgot about it.
Forgot all about that. That's a good story. Let me tell you that story. I can't remember what he had for dinner last night, but he remembers all the details about that particular endeavor and how it made the press and how they didn't like him and did like him or whatever it was. So it was a labor of love, I think, for both of us.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it immensely. It's kind of the crowning achievement of my life. So we wanted to have Tom in here today. He's just going to pontificate a little bit, as he does so well, and kind of tell you about some of the what it was like with some of the casinos in the older days.
I've lived here since 1979, and back then it was a much smaller town, and all these defunct casinos were still operational, like Silver Slipper and Castaways, the Old Sands, the Desert Inn, and I was in all of them. They didn't all have poker, but I at least toured through them at least. And the ones that did have poker, like Silver City and Desert Inn, I played a fair amount of poker in those places. In fact, my earliest tournament successes were a combination of downtown at the Golden Nugget, which I'll talk about shortly, and Silver City, which is no longer in existence. It was across the street from the Stardust, so I got plenty of stories about Stardust too, which is also no longer in existence. But I lived through all that, and that's just part of my story. Now I got to say something about this young man, Brad here. Actually, what I said to him was,
young man.
well, compared to me, you know, he's only 70. I'm 80 now, but I'm not ready to go sit in a rocking chair just yet. In fact, I'm playing a $1,500 buy-in World Series event tomorrow. And we're both playing next coming Monday in the seniors event, also at the World Series. So I haven't made a last longer bet with you yet, but you know, if you want,
Maybe we should.
I've made a lot of last longer bets over my career, but I was so impressed with the articles he had written for your magazine about all these old defunct casinos and stories about people I actually had never heard of, even though I've lived here for a long time. There were stories from the 30s and 40s. And I said, Brad, you know, I really like this, what you're writing. I think you have a book here if you want to pursue it that far. And he kind of shrugged his shoulders. Then after we got to know each other a little better, actually what I said to him after he didn't think he was qualified to write this book, I said, Brad, I'll take a chance on you if you'll take a chance on you. That's what I said. I've written a lot of poker strategy books. There's no strategy in this book. It's just stories. My whole career and some of the other famous poker players I've associated with. And I have 14 other poker books, strategy books in print. And to me, this is the crown jewel of all my books. And I have also in the audience here, the man who did just recently did the a narration of the book, audio version, which I'll have him explain a little bit about that a little bit later. All right. And he's not only been my partner on this book, he's become one of my closest friends. And that's what I think helped make it a working success, working with him. He was very easy to work with. And he kept pulling stories out of me that I'd forgotten. He really did. So we had a lot of fun, but it took, like we said, it took about a year and a half to write this book.
We entered this endeavor, if I may intercede. At the very beginning, he's like, there are a lot of autobiographies out there that people have written about themselves or authorized somebody else to it, and they all make that person look very saintly. Then I don't want that. I want this book to cover my life, warts and all. And as you'll find out, Brad, there were an awful lot of warts.
Sure were.
And he talks about them all very honestly.
So anybody that has gotten this book, I've had multiple compliments directed at Brad here for how well it was written. And I really do feel of all the books I've done, this is by far the best and the most interesting.
Oh, interesting is right.
Yeah, lots of stories.
Well, I think the first picture that I've got up there was taken shortly after Tom won the World Series, so we're talking 1983.
That's the shirt I wore the final day of the main event, which I won. Back then it was only a 4-day tournament, although we played into the 5th day. We played heads up 7.5 hours. And and that's a record that stood for over 30 years. It was finally broken a couple of years ago. But what people don't realize, the man who came in third in that tournament was Doyle Brunson, who's passed away a year or so back. But that was the last time Doyle Brunson made the final table of the main event. He won other bracelets after that and other things, but that was his last hurrah at the last table. Of course, they made him a betting favorite and so forth. And me and the man who came in second, Rod Pete, who's kind of forgotten pretty much by now, but he's still around. He still plays. He's coming out for some of the World Series. We had different plans than letting him win again. He'd already won twice.
This picture was in the Detroit Free Press, I believe.
That's correct. And that's the way it looked back then. You can
and I wanted to put that in there so you could see how close Binion's was, or the Horseshoe, was to the Golden Nugget right across the street with no canopy there. And tell them a little bit about the Horseshoe then.
The Horseshoe.
Start with the Golden Nugget,
Okay,
then we'll go to the
start
Horseshoe.
with the Golden Nugget. In a year before I moved to Las Vegas, and I moved permanently in 1979, I've been here ever since. For 1 year, I was flying United Airlines or Delta or wherever, back and forth from my hometown of Grand Rapids, Michigan, to Las Vegas to test the poker waters there. And at the Golden Nugget, I was just learning how to play Hold'em. I was mainly a 7-card stud player to start with, but I knew I was going to learn how to play Hold'em. So I used to play quite a bit at the Golden Nugget, which had a lot of Hold'em games, but they also had, like once a month or so, they had a tournament. They didn't even have tournament chips. It was casino chips, regular casino chips. And I remember it was like a $110 buy-in, and they played down to the final 3 players, and you kept what was in front of you. That was really the infancy of tournament poker. So I went down there, and I played it, and I came in a close second. Then I played it again the next month, and this time I won. So my first 2 tournament attempts in my whole life, I had top 2 finishes and money finishes in both of them. And I have to admit that kind of hooked me on it. Now back then, the Golden Nugget was nothing like what you see it today. They actually literally had sawdust on the floor back then when I was playing. You can't even hardly imagine that now, but that's the way it was. There was sawdust on the floor and a very informal atmosphere. There weren't a lot of casinos. There was more casinos that didn't have poker than did have poker, but that was one of the main ones. At the time when I started, the MGM Grand, which became Bally's and then became the Horseshoe, had a poker room. Caesar's Palace had a poker room. They were both 7-card stud places. Stardust had Raz, Hold'em, and some 7-card stud. So those are the places I would play the most. But there was other smaller casinos, like I think I mentioned Silver City.
Silver City.
Yeah, which is no longer in existence. They had tournaments there, and I used to play there, and I had a lot of success there. Those were some of my very first write-ups for tournaments that I won at Silver City, way back, long before Card Player Magazine was in existence. So I became basically a tournament junkie, a little bit of a tournament specialist, and I spent my career developing my tournament skills. And the first 2 books I wrote were on tournament poker strategy. But so the Golden Nugget was one of my main places to play. And that's how I really developed my skills mainly as limit Hold'em then. There was almost no limit games anywhere Hold'em. They had pot limit Hold'em, which is also kind of a dinosaur now. It's not spread anymore because no limit just totally took over. But back then, you were playing mainly limit Hold'em, not no limit like it is today, where no limit kind of dominates the poker world and the tournament scene in particular. After all, the main event is No Limit Hold'em of the World Series of Poker, which everybody shoots for. So anyways,
What was the poker room like at the Golden Nugget?
it was, I'm trying to remember exactly how many tables they had. They may have had 10, 12 tables, something like that.
Okay.
They still have a poker room at the Golden Nugget downtown, but it's mainly they do tournaments there, and they have a small poker room with mostly small limit games. So they had about a dozen tables now, I think, approximately, and they use a ballroom. They're holding a big tournament right now. A lot of casinos hold smaller buy-in tournaments. Well, the World Series of Poker is in progress, and that's one of the places. The most touching thing I've ever had in my poker career occurred at the Golden Nugget. Now, I was a regular there I said I moved there in '79. I was playing there even that one year. I flew back and forth from Grand Rapids testing the poker waters. So it was mainly my main room of play, certainly for Hold'em. So at the time, I was friendly with a lot of the players. We're rivals, but we're also friendly to each other. And after I had won the main event in 1983,
Which was in the middle of the night.
Middle of the night is right. It was by the time I was done, we finished playing about 1:30, and it was about 3 o'clock before they were done with the interviews and stuff. So I walked across the street to the Golden Nugget where I'd been playing right up practically to that a few days prior to the tournament. And I didn't say anything. I just stood on the rail for a minute. All of a sudden, they noticed I was there. They had been following the tournament. They were getting updates and stuff on who was doing what. I didn't say a word. There was no speech or anything. I just stood there for a few minutes, and all of a sudden, and the room was full too. All of a sudden, everybody stopped everything. They stopped dealing, they stopped playing, the floormen stopped officiating, and you could hear a pin drop in this noisy poker room. And I got a standing ovation. So I said, that really touched me. And that story is one of the many stories in that book. So I always have a very fond memory of the Golden Nugget. That's just one of many stories. I could go on probably a lot longer. You guys want to be here? Different things. So. Well,
he's going to be available for questions and answers.
Oh,
too.
yeah, sure.
All right. Well, let's.
All right.
You ready to move to the horseshoe?
Of course.
This is a picture that I found, which is pretty much what it looked like in
That's
1983.
Right. Now it's just Binion's, of course. The horseshoe label was, when it was finally sold to Caesars purchased it just to get the rights to the World Series of Poker. And they got it at a big bargain as far as I'm concerned. The rights to the World Series, I mean. But it was called Binion's Horseshoe back then. Now on the Strip, it's still Binion's downtown. But the Horseshoe, which used to be Bally's, which used to be MGM Grand and so forth, is now the Horseshoe. So.
Well, talk a little bit about the uniqueness of the Horseshoe. Tell them about the Horseshoe in 1983. Tell them about what their poker room was like.
In 1983, the Horseshoe Poker Room didn't exist. All they did was when the World Series of Poker came around, and back then it was took about 3 weeks. The year I won the main event, I also, prior to that, won the Limit Hold event the same year. They only had 14 events that year, and I won the 2 biggest ones, so I got overnight famous in poker as a result. Now they have approximately 100 bracelet events, and including online events. They also have what they call World Series of Poker in Europe, which they also have bracelets. So there are a lot more bracelets available now, opportunities. Of course, and the fields are much bigger too. But
what I find fascinating about back in the day was that they had to move slot machines and table games and other stuff and bring in poker tables.
That's right.
Because it just wasn't part of the casino. And they even had enough people playing that
they had to line up a few of the downtown casinos that had poker tables. They had too much business. The Horseshoe was very small back then. There's more stories about that, how they got so much bigger. They got bigger because they eventually purchased the Mint, which was adjacent to them, and they didn't do that till 1989. So up until 1989, it was a much smaller space, and they had no poker room at all, except during World Series time. Then they took out slot machines and did all that. And I led one group. We had to play like at the Four Queens, and others were another places downtown. I think Fremont.
probably.
Yeah, and Golden Nugget even had a couple tables. But we would make jokes about making the final casino. True story. So they finally, when the Horseshoe bought the Mint, all they did was knock a hole in the wall. Now they more than doubled their space, and
As you could tell.
yeah, and they had a lot more hotel rooms. You know, the Horseshoe didn't have too many hotel rooms to begin with, so it was really, back then, you knew most of the players. You might have only seen them once a year, but there weren't that many unfamiliar faces, because poker wasn't that big yet. That it certainly got that way. Now, if I see one person I even know at one of my tables, it's a rarity.
I've got the picture up there just to show them what it was like to at the final.
I could point out some of the people here. That this guy, his name is Jesse Alto. He came in second one year to Doyle Brunson. I don't know this guy. This is Crandall Addington, who's also a Hall of Famer. Also came in second in the World Series. That's Johnny Moss, I believe, the grand old man of poker. I'm sorry to see if I can find anybody in the audience that I recognize. But this was even before my time. This picture taken.
But it just goes to show you how cramped it was.
Oh yeah.
In the Horseshoe.
We had people staring over our shoulders practically. You know, there wasn't a big gap between the table and the audience. Yeah.
Tell them some Benny Binion stories.
Oh, got lots of those too. Benny Binion was somewhat of a controversial character, to say the least. But I thought this guy was fascinating. I had a lot of respect for him. I liked him a lot. But he would hold court in the downstairs restaurant at the Horseshoe daily. I mean, one of my friends said he was the only one in the restaurant, and Benny waved to him and said, "Come on, sit down, have breakfast with me." That was the kind of guy he was. He was a great guy to be friends with, and if you pissed him off, that was another story altogether. But he was something. So after I'd won the World Series, he got to know me a little bit, and vice versa. It's not like I'm hanging out with him or anything, you know. But he was very friendly and cordial. So one time, I went downstairs just to have a meal. That restaurant, by the way, is not even open anymore. They closed it off a long time ago. So here's Benny, surrounded by people, is telling one story after another. And I just look at him, you know, he doesn't say a word, he says, points, sit down at the chair. So for the next hour, I'm just listening to his stories, which are fascinating. And they got a couple of books on his life. I got a couple of his books that were written about his autobiography. He was quite a guy. And of course, he's the reason poker started to really get bigger and take off. You know, so, but if he liked you, there's nothing he wouldn't do for you. A lot of times people would go broke in his casino, and he'd give them money to get out of town or food money and stuff like that. It's nothing he had to do, but he did it. So he got pretty well known for that kind of generosity. Also, he says, give people a good gamble, and good food, good booze, and make little people feel like big people. And that was his philosophy, and it worked. Sometimes some of the strip casinos, when you have a temporary cash crunch, guess who they went to get a short-term loan? Him, with a small casino downtown against a big strip casino. This guy was just fascinating. And I said, if he liked you, there's not much he wouldn't do for you. But if you screwed with him, which some people did, Katie barred the door. Okay.
And then, unfortunately, Benny passed away. And things changed at the Horseshoe, didn't they?
Well, it certainly did change, but not right away. Jack Binion, who was basically running the casino all these years, Benny couldn't get a gaming license, by the way, because he went to jail for about 3 years or so for income tax evasion, so forth. So he paid all the fines. He actually did spend about 3.5 years in prison. So he couldn't get a gaming license. So his two sons were Jack Binion and Teddy Binion. Teddy Binion was the guy that got murdered, we believe, even though eventually they reversed the verdict, but he was murdered basically at around 1998. So anyways, Jack Binion was running the casino, and when Benny could no longer get a gaming license, he still stayed there at the casino and hung out a lot, and he made a lot of decisions, behind the scenes that Jack and Ted, who were running the casino, pretty much followed their dad's advice. So I sometimes wander off the track. I did that when writing this book with Brad sometimes.
Oh, it was great. It was great. We'd be on this subject, and he'd wander off on this subject, and then he'd wander off on that. And I just let him go, because I was tape recording the whole thing.
Yeah, and then
because I can't write that fast. But I'd have to bring him back, and then he would go down another channel. That was great. So tell him about how Becky Binion got to run the place.
Yeah, we're leading up to that. So Benny Binion died Christmas Day, 1989. So Jack and Ted ran the casino after that. Well, Jack got permission from the family, so to speak, to launch his own casinos in Mississippi. He didn't include his sister and her husband, who was not a very nice person, to put it mildly, who also couldn't get a gaming license. Becky Binion was married to a guy named Nick Bainan. Nick Bainan was actually the guy that hired me, although he wasn't supposed to be making executive decisions, because he could not get a gaming license because he did some bad things. Anyways, they weren't happy with the results they were getting at the Horseshoe downtown with Jack. So they threatened to take Jack to court. Jack was making so much money with these casinos he launched in Mississippi, he finally just threw in the towel and said, take it, and settled out of court and gave his sister and her husband control of the casino. And after that, for 5 years, they ran that casino. I should say they ran it into the ground. And they were finally forced to sell. They did a lot of bad things, to put it mildly. For example, their employees have health plans where they're supposed to be covered, with health insurance. They didn't pay some of the premiums, so people got stiffed when they found out they weren't covered. So that created all kinds of additional problems. So these were not nice people. The day I got hired, I was, for the worst 53 days of my life, I was a poker room manager down there at the Horseshoe. Because when they purchased the Mint, by the way, the Mint had a poker room, so they just kept it. The Horseshoe itself never had one. But even though they're now called, when they purchased the Mint, there was just one name now, the Horseshoe. So technically, from '89 on, they did have a poker room. So,
But they were, the timing wasn't necessarily that good because the Mirage and the Bellagio had now come to be.
yeah.
And that was some stiff competition coming from the Strip, especially when it came to, poker. They had a poker room, so they thought, what a brilliant idea. We'll hire, for the first time, a World Series of Poker main event winner to run our poker room and to run the tournament. Take it from there.
I said it was the worst 53 days of my life. Being a poker room manager was not quite the way I had envisioned it. Part of the problem was Nick Baden, who wasn't supposed to be making hiring decisions, but who was in fact doing exactly that. The day he hired me, he told me how much he hated poker players. He says, they don't gamble enough, I don't like the way they dress, blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking to myself, how did the Horseshoe get famous? Oh, poker, World Series. And here's the owner now, just telling me how much he hated poker players. Well, this is not a good sign. So I was kind of I was warned before that. Linda Johnson, who many of you probably know, tried to talk me out of not taking the job. I just couldn't resist having a chance to put in my own schedule at the World Series, because I had plenty of ideas on what I wanted to do, most of which I wanted to be a hell of a lot nicer to the players than Becky and Nick Banen were. And I'm pretty much of a straight arrow, so I'm not looking to chisel anybody, and I just didn't like the way they thought about things and conducted business, and they did a lot of things that were just not good. So anyways, they decided that they didn't like my performance as cover room manager, so they gave me a promotion or a different title, director of poker operations, so I didn't have to be there every day. I could focus a lot more on the schedule and preparing for the World Series, so I did all that. And then my reward was the day before the tournament started, they fired me. Now, maybe I just deserved it. I really don't think I did, but that's beside the point. We're not always the best judge of our own situation.
Not a very good PR move when you think about it.
No, it wasn't.
Word got out pretty quick, and nobody liked Becky and Nick, that nobody in the poker community anyway, thought fondly of either one of them. And then they fire Tom the day before the tournament. Now, he's in a position as tournament director. He's planned it, put it all together, put together the schedule.
The staff, too.
The staff, everything that goes into it. And what happens? They fire him. Now, there's a financial disincentive there, obviously, but part of it is there's just a lot of tips involved when people win tournaments. They tip management, they tip the dealers. So it wasn't just a pay cut, it was some significant tip money that didn't come his way.
Also, by then they knew that I was pretty much a straight arrow, and they did a lot of shady things in their business operation. So I was really, when I think about it, I wonder why the hell they hired me in the first place. They're the polar opposite of these people, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. And I thought, for interest of anybody,
That's how I looked like 2 years ago, for a while.
the poker room where, and, you know, everybody remembers when Chris Moneymaker won the World Series. The room where the World Series of Poker really caught fire and got famous, it's still there. And this is that room. And if anybody wants to go see it,
On the second floor.
it's clear in the back of what used to be the Mint, right as the doors would open onto, what is that, Ogden and
Yeah.
First Street. There's kind of a wide open space there, and there's also some escalators that go up to the second floor. I don't think they're working, so you have to walk up the steps. But as you get up there and immediately kind of turn to the left and around the corner, there's that room. And I think the carpet's the same. I mean, you'll know you're in the right room if you see this little mirrored thing that goes all the way around. And last time I went up there to see it, they were having pool tournaments, so they still use it. You can actually get online on Binion's, and they have pictures of it where they're promoting it as that space. But it just kind of sent chills up and down my spine. I said, Tom, we need to go see that. Because his office at the point in time was just kind of like right around the corner. So, I don't know, fascinating bit of trivia, just to see that, you know, the place that made poker really, really famous is just kind of there. But at least it's still there.
The year Moneymaker won, which was 2003, which really changed the face of poker quite a bit, actually, for a lot of reasons. That was the last year the Horseshoe was under their control. And right after the World Series of 2003, that's when they sold it. And they were pretty stupid. They really, they sold it for, they were in debt and stuff, so their debts were clear, and they probably kept a couple million or so, whatever. But the World Series, right now, I don't even know what the value would be. It just got sold probably for maybe 500 million, something ridiculous. It's worth that. You know, they draw, the main event alone for the last 2 years had over 10,000 entries. I played in the one tournament I played so far this year, and I made a min cash, which wasn't much, but it was still a win is still a win, even if it's a little one. But they had over 19,000 entries. This is for this $1,000 no limit tournament, because they had multiple day ones and so forth. So it's gotten so huge and so big. But when the Bainans were under control of it, they didn't know how to promote it properly anyways. And the tournament got too big for the facilities they had anyway. So it was already, they were losing control.
So tell them what you promised that helped get the World Series of Poker non-smoking.
Well, yeah, okay, now I was actually, the day I got hired, believe it or not, was 9/11/2001.
That was another ominous thing, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but we're just, while they're interviewing me in their home, by the way, I wasn't even at the casino. Now the TV's on, I start talking about all the planes crashing and everything. I said, Jesus, what the hell's going on? You know, we thought we were under maybe a serious attack from, you know,
God knows who.
a real invasion or something. Nobody knew anything at the time. So I lost my train of thought again.
Smoking.
Oh, it's smoking, yeah. The World Series, they allowed smoking right at the table right up through 2001. Now, I'm hired in September of 2001 to do the 2002 World Series. Up to that time, it had never been non-smoking. So that was the first thing I wanted to do. I, along with several other people, have been circulating petitions at various poker venues to try to get at least tournament poker non-smoking. We had even smokers that were prominent poker players signed the petition and even put smoker in parentheses on the petition. I still have the original petition, in fact. Actually, Daniel Straker has it in her safe at her home. But anyway, Benny Binion, the founder's grandson, was Benny Banion Jr., I guess they call him. Anyway, he was working for his parents at the casino. He was, at the time, he was about 25, and he liked poker. And I said, look, and he was a smoker too, I said, it's going to happen eventually, but I can't remember exact wording I said, but we really have got to try to get this tournament going non-smoking. People would complain, they get sick, the secondhand smoke, even the smokers got sick of the other smokers' secondhand smoke. People were getting sick, bronchial problems, myself included. We call it the horseshoe crud during the World Series, true story. So I said, I'll make a deal with you. If you can convince your parents to allow this tournament to go non-smoking, I'll give you private poker lessons for free, as much as you want. And he said, okay. And he did it. So I did give him lessons, and we got it on. So even though they fired me the day before, it was already advertised as non-smoking for the first time. The World Series has gone non-smoking every year since, so starting in 2002. So I had one guy I didn't even know came up to me a few years ago at the World Series when it was still at the Rio, and he said, Tom, do you know what your proudest poker accomplishment is? I said, yeah, I sure do. I said, it's getting the World Series to go non-smoking. He said, that's right. So that was years after the fact. I like that. I'm still at least remembered for that. I had a lot of help, by the way. It wasn't just a one-man show as far as getting it to go non-smoking everywhere else. And I had a lot of help with that. But the World Series would not have gone non-smoking if I hadn't did what I did. But I knew it was just a matter of time anyways before they finally caved in. They were so afraid that they were going to lose business. That was one of the reasons they allowed smoking that long. And they were so afraid that the smokers, some of them would complain if they couldn't smoke anymore, and they were afraid they'd lose business. The exact opposite happened. Smokers aren't going to quit playing poker just because they can't smoke at the table. They can take it out in the hallway or outside, when they have to have their cigarette. And just the opposite, when people that couldn't stand it anymore started coming back. So attendance just shot up, and it caught on all over the country. Within a couple of years, almost all poker rooms were non-smoking. It took a little bit longer in Europe, but it caught on there too, finally. Europeans smoked more than, I think, U.S. people at the time. So anyways, that's the story on that. But I had a lot of people, helping with this. I had the people that signed the petition were a who's who in the poker world back then, yeah.
Yeah, and if you can imagine, and I've seen it, there's these, white pieces of paper, and there's, Doyle Brunson and all these very famous poker players of yore, and there's their signature. Not, you didn't just have a piece of paper with one signature on it. He's got a piece of paper with 30 signatures on it. It's fascinating stuff. Let's go back in time to tell them about the rat's nest. I mean, the Stardust.
The rat's nest. There was more cheating going on at the Stardust than any place else as far as poker was going. I don't know how many people are familiar with the name of Tony Spilatro, Tony the Ant. He was the most notorious gangster that ever hit the city.
We call him Joe Pesci, I think.
Pardon? Yeah, Joe Pesci. Bugsy Siegel was probably the most famous, but I think Spilotro was the second most famous. Guess where he hung out? At the Stardust. And the mob controlled the Stardust at the time. This guy, Lefty Rosenthal. It's all in this big movie called Casino, which included not those names exactly, but they represented the characters. And he did a lot of terrible things. He was a murderer, of
You
course.
used to play there quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And
I always made a habit of trying to avoid people like that. I never even noticed them there, to tell the truth. When I go there, I'm there to play poker, and I'm focused on that. But there was several players in that era that did have connections to him. And I could go on indefinitely, but there were stories about that. Skalansky actually worked for him for a while.
Oh, did he?
As a player and giving him poker advice.
Well, there was a lot of rumors of cheating going on there at the poker room, too.
Yeah, I was cheated more than once. In spite of being cheated, you're not cheated every time, of course, but it definitely happened to me. I had it verified. I still beat the games, in spite of being cheated on multiple occasions. I still beat them because they can't cheat every hand,
As I like to tell him, nobody likes a bragger.
It's true. I was a pretty good player,
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, like
That's right.
Muhammad Ali calling the round. If he really could do it. I guess it's not bragging, I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you had any other stories then of the Stardust. I also wanted to touch on the old Frontier. And what was it like playing there?
Oh, it was fun. They had a small room, but they also had some big tournaments there. Jack Strauss, in fact, hosted some tournaments there in the mid-'80s. And I played there several times. And
Well, we've got one picture of you
Yeah.
playing here, and it doesn't look like there was really a poker room, just a
They-
poker
there wasn't-
area.
They had a small poker room, but for the tournament, this is a tournament picture. They
Okay.
had, knock off slot machines, and you can see a craps table right behind in the background. That's what it was like. Now you can't get that close to the tournament tables at the World Series, for example.
Yeah.
So it's a lot different. We're totally different eras. The way
Well, I
poker's
can tell from
advanced.
that picture things were a lot different. Some of us has changed.
Yeah. I used to wear a lot of cowboy outfits, black Stetsons and stuff. I still have a Stetson now, but it's a bright pink. Why do I wear a pink Stetson and a pink shirt? Is my daughter got breast cancer not once but twice, and she's very active doing charity work for where she lives on Long Island, New York. They have a organization there that supports breast cancer victims and stuff like that. So I wear these pink outfits. And I don't even own a black Stetson anymore.
Oh yeah, that's that pink
That's
that
it.
pink outfit.
Yeah. Should we get Bob up here now?
Well, I just wanted to touch on, gosh, you
Okay.
see all these books up here, just in case you didn't know, they're all for sale, and Tom will sign his autograph. But I'm also kind of pleased to announce that we have it's not only available at a hardcover and a soft cover, it's also available as an ebook, and now it's available as an audio book. And the fellow that did the narration is,
He's my friend and neighbor. Guess where I met him? A year ago, we were playing a World Series event, and we were both in the money on day 2. And this is a tournament that had, 20,000 entries, and we just happened to be at the same table. We found out we're neighbors. I live in a mobile home park, and so does he, the same one, and he's on one end of it and I'm on the other. So I never ran into him. Take it from there, Bob.
Okay, tough act to follow here, but
Not really.
not really, but that's typical Tom. He's got humility along with his other virtues, so it's been a privilege to meet both these guys. Tom and I, as he said, met at the Colossus event last year,
Yeah.
and he was wearing that hat, and my wife and I had started playing at South Point, and I made a casual comment about South Point, how much we liked it, and asked if he played there, and he said, oh yeah. And one thing led to the other, and then next thing you know, we discovered we were neighbors, which is interesting. But prior to discovering we were neighbors, we introduced ourselves, and I said, I'm Bob Collins. He said, I'm Tom McEvoy. And I thought he said McElroy. And I said, McElroy? He says, no, McEvoy. I said, McEvoy.
Why do I?
Don't suppose you ever wrote anything about poker? He said, yeah, done a little bit about poker. I said, my goodness, because back in, I guess it was 2000 or so, I played in the World Series and purchased his iconic work, really, Tournament Poker. If you haven't gotten that one, that's a good North Star to go by as far as how to approach tournament play.
He had a bunch of my books.
Oh yeah, I definitely bought a number of your books, but that one in particular was extraordinarily helpful to me, and I've won my share since.
He didn't recognize me, by the way, when we were at the same table.
Yeah, imagine that. You know, that would anybody recognized me who knew me. But no, I didn't recognize you at all. And, you know, look at the contrast. You've got this, and then you've got that.
This is from 1983.
And this is today.
Yeah.
And that's how I met him. But I remembered this.
Or that one.
One thing led to the next. He shared with me that he had a book out, Poker Pioneer, which I very quickly purchased and read. And if you haven't read it, I encourage you to do so. It's extraordinarily insightful about so many things, primarily Tom, and you know his career as a professional poker player. It's an extraordinary read. When you imagine he came out here in 1979, I believe, and with his his station wagon and his wife and his children, moved out here in July. And from there on, he quickly caught fire, as he shared. And the tournament came in second and first. Anyway,
This guy is just like Tom. Like, if I let him go, he'll go on forever.
yeah, I was just getting warmed up.
I just wanted
I was
to.
born in 19. And then
Tom and I owe him a debt of gratitude because he came to Tom and said, have you ever thought about doing an audio book? And Tom's like, yeah, but I don't think my voice can handle it. And I agreed. And he said, well, I'll volunteer to do it. We said, cool.
yeah, and just like An Act of Love was at the foundation of Brad writing this book, brotherly love, whatever you want to call it, affection for someone I had great respect for was what prompted me and continued to motivate me to do the audiobook narration, which is now
Available.
on sale. Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. But if you don't like to particularly read, I know this is something that is very new to me anyway, but I guess a lot of folks prefer to listen to things when they're driving in the car, whatever. So it is now available.
This guy set up a studio in his house.
Yeah, we did. My
To
wife
do
and I
this.
built a studio, and
His wife's the
that's her name.
pretty looking lady back there with the sunglasses on her hat. Yeah.
So, I don't know what else to say. I'm humbled myself. Again, Tom is my best friend in Las Vegas, and I know he has many best friends everywhere, including Brad. But I'm honored to be part of this trio.
And we thank you very much.
And it's a
Certainly
privilege.
do.
So I hope that you all get a chance to, you know, to get.
We've become pretty good friends these days, as I have with Brad, of course.
So
That's enough of me.
at this point, we'll open it up to, anybody have any questions of Tom?
I do. Tom, as you all know, to play in any WSOP event now, every player has to sign a release that you can be videoed, they can publish your likeness, and they can show your hole cards. If they would have been outside in 1983, would you and Doyle and all the legends said, sure, we'll sign that, or would the WSOP have ended in 1983?
The answer to that would be that they, to a man, would have said no, and I would have said yes, because poker back then, it's like watching paint dry. There weren't too many programs on it. They did cover the World Series and stuff, but there wasn't that much out there. And I said, it's never going to catch on a spectator sport unless the people can know what's going on. I said that years before the whole card camera and all this happened. I knew it was going to be a dead issue indefinitely. And of course, when they announced the whole card camera and stuff, the big players they didn't want to give up all their great secrets and stuff. So what do you think happened when the public could now see what's going? It shot through the roof. Between that, the internet, and the moneymaker effect, which was very real, everything shot through the roof. When I announced to my family, including my wife and 3 children, that I wanted to go to Las Vegas full-time to play poker, they all said I had lost my mind. Really, back then that was just not an acceptable thing to do. I said, how can you move my parents were the worst. How can you move our grandchildren 2,000 miles away? Well, now people aspire to be professional players. Back then it wasn't such a popular thing to do, but I told everybody the truth. I said, I hate the cold weather in Michigan, and I'm never going to be happy with my life to whether I can see if I could pull this off or not. And okay, I'm not supposed to brag, right? I made it from day one as a player, from day one.
Yeah.
I never had to go back to work as an accountant. I have when I went to college, I was originally going to be a CPA. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting. It's got a layer of dust on it now, that my diploma. I never did go back to work as an accountant. But I keep my own meticulous records, which is how he was able to document so many of the things in my book. I mean, I reconcile things.
I have a footnote on that question. Interesting. So one of the things that I feel so fortunate that I was able to co-author this book with Tom is I got to talk with a lot of famous poker players and poker people. And one of them was Jack Binion. And one of the things that I asked him about was, as poker progressed, what did you see that you were right about, and what did you see that you were wrong about? And he said, I was wrong about the whole camera. I really thought the guys would not like that it would just disrupt things, and he said, I was just completely wrong about that. I was right about opening my own casinos in Mississippi, but I was wrong about that. And
he made so much money in Mississippi that's why he didn't care about letting his sister take over at the Horseshoe.
And Jack's the kind of guy that when he went up and did that, he cut his whole family in on a little piece of the action. Not his sister Becky, by the way, but all his kids and grandkids and what have you. And not many people do that. It's just the kind of guy that he was, and everybody loved Jack Binion. They crossed the picket lines when the International Brotherhood of Culinary Union went on strike. These guys donned buttons that says, I back Jack, and went to play poker. Interesting. Any other questions?
As an old school player, what's your attitude about today's technology, using solvers, all the GTO stuff? Do you embrace it? Do you ignore it?
Good question.
I don't think that that should be allowed at a tournament, even on breaks. I think that's, you know, they had such a controversy last year because the winner was getting this information about his opponents, and so they felt it was a little bit tainted, him winning the World Series. So they outlawed that this year. So these are useful tools, but I'm a 20th century man trapped in the 21st century, so I don't really do anything with it.
It's software that the players can type in what the hands are, what the bets were, and it will calculate.
Yeah.
Like AI.
Do all that stuff.
Well, so this was the problem last year.
That was the problem at the World Series last year, until they outlawed that this
Finish
year.
a hand, and the guy would run up to his buddies with a laptop.
Yeah.
and they'd see it.
Yeah, they take short breaks, and it was just it's not a good thing at all. I can see if you're sitting at home on the computer or something, and you're playing against faithless people, that something like that could be useful and stuff. But you're getting into, like I said, I'm trapped in the 21st century with 20th century technology skills. So, but there's a lot of very successful high-stakes players that do use these tools. I don't think they're necessarily wrong or cheating even, but they definitely should not be allowed when you're playing a tournament. Absolutely not.
And
I'm
they've
100%
changed their
agree.
rules this year.
They changed the rules, and I 100% support that. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Question for you mentioned, your background prior to poker was in accounting. I may totally be misremembering this, but I seem to remember a picture of you, and you had like an accountant's briefcase. Am I recalling that correct? Did you keep records on wins and losses, or what were you doing with your briefcase?
I do that to this day. I used to actually, now I got a little man purse I haul around, but I used to have a briefcase. I actually did. Sometimes I put my lunch in there if I'm going to go on, or I always have reading material because I'm a big reader, and I've never been bored a day in my life. There's just so much to do out there. I'm kind of a Netflix junkie too, but I read extensively on a lot of different subjects. A lot of it's just pleasure reading. I'm a big Stephen King fan, which it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think
All right,
he's a
I'm
great writer.
going to tell on you now.
All right.
All right. How many people do you know that read 10 books at a time? Chapter here, next book, chapter there, next book, chapter there.
My record was at one time I had 50, but there were a lot of more short stories, so it wasn't like trying to read that many novels at once didn't work. But I read historical stuff. I fancy myself as somewhat of an expert on U.S. presidents. Give me any number. There's 47 presidents, counting our current guy.
29.
29 was Warren G. Harding, elected in 1920, died in office 1923. His vice president was Calvin Coolidge. I can do that for all
Where
of
was
them.
Warren Harding from?
Marion, Ohio, which just happens to be where he lives.
I think we've gotten to our hour. Does anybody have any other questions? If not, oh, that's a good question.
$30.
30 bucks.
Oh, I always
His
say
signature is $30. The
and
book is free.
I brought one hardcover. The